Hey guys, tonight we're bundling up big time. You blink your eyes open to a room so cold your breath floats above you like a ghost. Somewhere, a crow is already shrieking on a bare rooftop. Your toes are curled under a thin wool blanket, stiff from frost. The fire's gone out. Again. You shift, slowly, trying not to let the chill under the blanket escape. The straw mattress beneath you crackles. It smells faintly of damp earth and something a little worse. You don't complain. No one does. Not here, not in a winter like this. Outside, it's not snowing. It's snowed. A heavy silence blankets the world. Snow covers every rooftop, ledge and field. The outhouse is buried to its knees. A small bird thuds softly against the window lattice, trying to peck the ice away. You press a hand to the wall. It's stone cold, literally. In houses like these, walls sweat when the hearth dies. And that hearth? It takes more than firewood to keep it fed. You need rights. You need access. You need someone to fetch it. Someone who doesn't mind frozen toes and splinters, or someone desperate enough to go without gloves. You sit up and reach for the clothes you slept in. Yes, slept in. Undressing before bed is a luxury for people with feather duvets and castle tapestries. For you, it's the same shift you wore yesterday, and probably tomorrow too. If you're lucky, it's dry. Every movement feels slow this morning, the kind of slowness that comes not from laziness, but from bracing. You know what happens when skin touches metal in this cold? You know what it's like to spill water and watch it freeze before it hits the floorboards. And worst of all, you know today is a market day, which means walking, miles, through snow, to reach a square where everyone is coughing, wrapped in everything they own, trying to trade half-frozen onions for a lump of fat or half a pail of milk. But first, the fire. Without it, the rest doesn't happen. You pull your cloak around you, thick but patched, and step into the single-room world of your family's life. A grandmother stirs in the corner, bundled in so many shawls she looks like laundry with eyes. A baby whimpers in a cradle stuffed with rags. Your mother is already poking the ashes. No spark. You hand her the flint and steel without a word. This ritual is older than both of you. Blow gently. Shield it from the draft. Again. Success. The tiniest spark becomes a flicker. The flicker becomes a tongue of warmth. No larger than a candle at first, but you feel it. Every woman in the room leans in, hands out, eyes heavy with sleep and worry. There's a legend in your village about a woman who kept her fire going for 3 whole winters, never letting it die. No one believes it, but no one mocks it either. Fire is survival. Fire is freedom. Fire is everything. And still, your mind drifts to the neighbour's girl, Anis. She didn't wake up last winter. They say she slept too close to the wall, that the damp got into her bones, that her mother found her stiff as a board, mouth open like she was still gasping. No one talks much about Anis anymore, but everyone keeps their children away from the wall now. You do too. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. And hey, drop a comment with your city and what time you're listening. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You grab the water pot. The surface has a skin of ice. You break it with a spoon. Your fingers are already numb, and it's only sunrise. You don't even notice when your breath starts coming out in short white puffs anymore. It's just part of life. You wake with ice on the rafters and fall asleep hoping your toes still feel like toes, and yet, somehow, you get used to it. Or you pretend you do. You set the iron pot near the hearth, nudging it carefully into the orange glow. A lazy curl of steam begins to rise, your morning miracle. It's barely warmed through, but it's enough to wash your face without flinching. You kneel down, cupping the water to your cheeks, rubbing the grime from your eyes, wincing as the raw air bites your wet skin. There's no soap today. You used the last of the ashlie last week, and it's too cold to scrub laundry anyway. As you dry your hands on your skirts, you glance out the doorframe, where the wind has carved a smooth tunnel through the snow. Somewhere out there, The baker's wife is already pounding dough. Somewhere else, a widow is trying to light a fire with dung because her son couldn't steal enough kindling from the manor woods. And you've still got to milk the goat. You brace yourself and step out, boots crunching on the snow-packed threshold. Your legs sting immediately. The wind cuts right through wool like a knife. You make it to the lean-to without slipping, but only just. The goat blinks at you, annoyed. She hates winter as much as you do. Her breath is foggy. She smells like old hay and smoke. You crouch and begin the work. It's slow going. Her teats are cold. Your hands are stiffer than they should be, and you curse under your breath. Just softly, just enough for the goat to hear. Still, after a few tense minutes, you coax out enough for one small pitcher. It's enough, for now. You don't stay outside longer than necessary. Not today. Back inside, the fire's grown bold. Your mother's kneeling beside it, feeding it slivers of bark and dried stalks. She doesn't turn to greet you. She's already boiling the water again, this time for the oats. Everyone eats from the same pot. Everyone gets one scoop, two if there's extra, and then the door opens. It's your cousin. She's older, but only by a little. Her cheeks are raw and her shawl is dusted white. She clutches a bundle to her chest. Inside, is her baby, wrapped in layers of cloth, then rags, then more cloth again. The infant's nose is pink and crusted with cold. His eyes don't open. I didn't know where else to go, she says, and she doesn't have to explain. Her fire must have died. Her husband's off digging trenches for the Lord's drainage ditch. He won't be home till dusk. The cold in her cottage probably reached the cradle first. You nod, step aside, let her in. She sits near the hearth without asking, her whole body curled around the child. You fetch your own shawl and place it over them both. Your grandmother mutters something and adds a second log to the fire. That's not something you usually do, but today you all silently agree. It's worth it. You hear someone mention the weather. There's talk of a hard frost tonight, the kind that burns crops even beneath the soil, the kind that seeps into bones and never really leaves, but you push the thought away. Right now, the flames crackle, and the room smells like smoke and boiling oats, and the baby stirs, letting out a soft nasal grunt. He's not frozen. He's just cold, like the rest of you. The wind howls outside again, pulling at the thatch, but you sit closer to the fire. Everyone does. No one says a word. You just listen to the world creaking under snow and hold your breath, hoping the warmth will last till tomorrow. Your breath still curls in the morning air, even inside. But now, with the fire catching properly, it's time to start dressing in earnest, layer by careful layer. You don't rush it. No one does. Because this, right here, is a matter of survival. The first layer is a linen smock, already on you since last night, and likely unwashed for weeks. But linen is clever. It wicks away moisture and breathes, so your sweat won't turn to ice against your skin. You tug it straight, the collar rumpled, sleeves poking out beneath the wool. Next, a kirtle, a heavier dress made of rough-spun wool, dyed in dull brown or faded blue. Yours has patches under the arms and a long tier mended with crooked stitches, but it's thick, and that's what matters. You slide it on, feeling the warmth grow closer. Then comes the petticoat. Not the kind of silk nonsense the noblewomen wear at feasts, but a second woolen layer, sometimes quilted if you're lucky. You step into it, tying it tight at the waist with a strip of old cloth. It creaks as you move. That's good. That means it's dense. The sleeves are extra today. You slip on a pair of wool arm warmers, long tubes with thumb holes that your mother knitted 3 winters ago. They're a bit tight now, but you don't care. Your elbows thank you. And of course, your apron. Not to keep clean, but to trap heat around your middle and block the wind from sneaking in where the kirtle opens. You double the knot and tuck the corners in. You're not done yet. The woolen shawl comes next, wound around your shoulders, then crossed over your chest and tied behind your back. Some women wear it over their head too, if it's thin enough. You add a second kerchief under your chin, just in case the wind whips sideways today. By now, you're waddling slightly. The layers make it hard to move fast, but that's the point. Heat trapped between cloth is heat that stays. Every inch of you is padded like a loaf of winter bread. At your feet you stuff wool scraps into your worn leather shoes. There are holes in the soles, but the rags will help. You can't afford proper stockings. Those are for the townswomen, or for girls who sew for the Lord's Hall. You make do. Sometimes you wrap your feet in strips of linen, then tuck them inside boiled leather slippers so stiff they barely bend. But they last, and they're dry. Your sister appears beside you, puffing into her fingers. She's bundled too, though not as thick. She's still growing, and last week her only petticoat tore along the hem. You gave her yours. You didn't say anything about it. She didn't either. That's how things work here. As you both step out into the yard, the air bites immediately at your eyes, but the rest of you hold strong. You can feel how the heat layers around your body like rings of armour. It's not comfort, but it's insulation. And you remember what old Bess said last year before she passed in the frost. Cold don't get you in one blow. It sneaks in, one fingertip at a time. You believed her then. You believe her now. You tug the shawl tighter as you reach the woodpile, or rather, what's left of it. A few frozen twigs, a half-rotted branch, and one prized log buried beneath a curl of snow. You chip away at the ice with the heel of your boot, dislodging it with a grunt. It lands hard in your apron like treasure. You glance down the lane. Other women are emerging too, wrapped like onions, barely recognisable. Their clothes tell quiet stories. The layers aren't just for warmth. They mark class, loss, inheritance. One wears a fur collar sewn from a dead husband's mantle. Another walks with sleeves 3 inches too short because her mother was shorter, and that was the only hand-me-down left. The girl at the corner hut? Her cloak was once a tapestry. You can still make out the edge of a stag's antler. You head toward the path leading to the woodshed, passing a pair of boys kicking at a frozen puddle. They shriek when it cracks, not from fear but from joy. Something breaking in this frozen world is a kind of music. The shed door groans as you pull it open. The smell of damp bark and dry dust greets you. You run your hands along the stack, choosing the driest logs you can find. They're not yours, strictly speaking, but no one will notice if one goes missing. You trade a glance with the girl from the butcher's house. She's already pocketing a kindling bundle. You both nod. That's enough. Back inside, you set the log beside the hearth like a gift. Your cousin is still there, baby now sleeping against her breast, breath slow and even. The room feels warmer, maybe from the fire, maybe from the bodies huddled close. You start helping your mother with repairs, mending a sleeve, darning a hole in someone's foot wrap. She uses thread spun from leftover wool, coarse, grey, but strong. You try to match the stitches, but yours always come out uneven. Doesn't matter, as long as they hold. Sometimes you wish for fur, real fur, not just the scraps you stitch into your sleeves or line into mittens. The nobility wear whole cloaks lined with fox and squirrel, badger even. There's an old story that the Baron's wife once had a mantle of pure white ermine, so long it dragged across the floor like snow itself. You think about that sometimes, especially when your thighs go numb beneath 3 layers of wool. But you've also heard that ladies in fur often shiver more than you do. Their gowns are loose, made for show, not for battle. You, on the other hand, are wrapped in intention. Every garment was chosen. Every layer tells the cold, not today. You remember, as your grandmother once muttered, wool remembers heat. It's true. A wet cloak dries stiff but keeps a memory of the last fire. And when you put it back on just before heading out, you feel it. That ghost of warmth. It gives you something to chase. By late afternoon, the sky dims into that colourless twilight only winter knows. You head out again, this time with your sister, to check the trap set for rabbits by the riverbank. You carry a basket, she carries nothing but a whistle to scare off foxes. The wind has picked up, and snow begins to fall again, slow and thick like flour. The world softens, and so do you, under your 100 layers, walking like a bundled ghost through a land made entirely of hush. Nightfall doesn't come with a crash. It seeps in, slow and grey, like ink dropped into milk. The sun disappears without ceremony. You're inside by then, of course, because no one lingers after dusk in winter unless they have no choice. Even the goats huddle tight against the barn wall. Even the mice have gone still. The fire has been fed twice since morning, and the hearth now burns confidently, the stones around it warm enough to press your hands to. The room glows with that deep orange warmth that only real flame can make, and tonight you get the best part: sleep. But winter sleep isn't peaceful, it's preparation. Before you can rest, you have to build your little fortress against the cold. You start with the bedding, layers of straw piled high and tamped flat, then covered with the stiff wool blanket. The straw shifts when you lie down, poking in odd places, but you'll hardly notice once your body heat gets trapped. At least that's the hope. Some nights the straw stays icy, and you wake up with your back stuck to it, damp and aching. You fetch the warming stone, a fist-sized chunk of iron, heated in the hearth. You wrap it in rags and tuck it down by your feet. It's still too hot to touch directly, but the warmth radiates up like a hidden sun. If it holds until morning, you'll call that a miracle. Your sister lies down beside you, shivering under her own blanket. She reaches out and steals some of your warmth with her feet. You kick back half-heartedly. She grins. Above you, the rafters drip occasionally. The thatch has trapped snow, and now it melts slow and rhythmic. You listen. Drip. Drip. The rhythm becomes a kind of lullaby. But not yet. There's still the wool to pull over your head, a makeshift hood fashioned from a torn shawl. It keeps your hair from frosting overnight. You've woken up before with your braid frozen to the mattress. Once was enough. You roll toward the wall, but not too close. You remember Anis. Damp walls are killers. You wedge a bundle of rags between you and the stones and pull the blanket tight under your chin. Still, a draft sneaks in. This is the moment when your body does its strange magic trick. It goes still, even as your mind stays watchful. You let your muscles sink into the straw, let your breath slow. Outside, wolves howl, distant and hollow. Inside, someone coughs twice, then turns over with a creak. Some nights, if the wind is just right, it sneaks through the cracks in the shutters and lifts the edge of the blanket like a mischievous child. You've learned to sleep curled, arms tight around your chest, knees drawn up. It's the only way to keep the warmth inside. You become your own hearth, and if you're lucky, you'll dream, not of summer because that's too far away, but of being wrapped inside the fur-lined cloak of a queen, standing beside a fire that never goes out. You've never worn such a cloak, but dreams cost nothing. Sleep doesn't arrive in one soft wave. It comes in shifts, like a night watch. You drift off, then wake again when the wind howls, when the baby stirs, when your sister's elbow finds your ribs. There's no such thing as uninterrupted sleep in a house like this, not in the heart of winter. You blink up at the beams above, watching your breath rise in faint little clouds. They look like the ghosts of your own thoughts, vanishing before they reach the ceiling. The fire has shrunk to embers now, and your grandmother is already up again, shuffling across the floor with a stick in one hand and a scrap of bark in the other. She's too old to sleep deeply. She says the cold reminds her she's still alive. She adds the bark. Coals glow red, pulsing like a hidden heartbeat. Soon you'll hear the kettle clink again. Morning doesn't begin with sunlight here, it begins with smoke. Your mother rises next, checking the baby in the cradle. His breath puffs in tiny bursts, and she rubs his hands between hers like kindling. You pretend to be asleep so she won't make you get up yet. But your body betrays you. Your foot twitches, and she sees. She doesn't say anything, just tosses you a wink and returns to her work. Eventually it's your turn to stoke the heat again. You swing your legs off the straw bed and wince as your feet hit the cold floor. The warming stone is long cold, a lump of forgotten metal under the blanket. You wrap your shawl tighter and tiptoe to the hearth. Here's the truth no one tells you. You never really get warm in winter. You chase it. Every time you add fuel to the fire, huddle beneath a blanket, pull your sleeves over your hands, you're chasing something that never quite stays, like holding smoke. You think about the tricks other women use. One old widow in the village sleeps with a clay jar filled with hot water wrapped in linen. Another lines her bed with moss stolen from the damp side of the well. It holds warmth better than straw, she swears. You tried it once, but the moss smelled like mildew and made your skin itch. And then there's the woman they call Bitter Meg. She swears by geese, not to eat but to sleep with. She keeps 2 fat ones in her room, lets them nest near the foot of her bed, says the body heat helps, says they don't mind. No one argues with Meg, not since she chased the peddler out of town with a broom and a slipper. You smile at the thought. Not all warmth comes from fire or fur. Some of it comes from stories, from the way women pass down the small tricks, the half-whispered cures, the impossible memories of a time before the winters got this long. You blow gently on the coals, coaxing them back to life. A thin flame catches and dances. Its light flickers across the walls, tracing shadows of shawls and pots and sleeping forms. For a moment the room is golden, quiet, whole. Then someone sneezes and the baby starts to cry, and just like that, morning is here. The hearth isn't just the heart of the home, it's the battlefield. You crouch low in front of it now, blowing gently into a stubborn bundle of ash and ember. Your fingers are red and raw, stiff from cold and smoke. This isn't just about comfort, it's about power. In winter, whoever controls the fire controls the day, and for most households that means the women. You squint as a tiny tongue of flame catches on the dry bark. There it is. You guard it with your hands like a secret. Too much wind, it dies. Too little, it suffocates. You've done this 1,000 times. Still, every morning feels like your first try. Your mother passes behind you, muttering something about the chimney draught. She's right. The wind outside is fierce today, tugging at the shutters and whistling through the cracks in the roofline. You stuff a rag into the largest gap in the wall, trying to keep the warmth from fleeing. You'd think, with how much work it takes, that firewood would be the most precious thing in the house. And it is. But it's not always yours to claim. In some villages you can't gather fallen branches from the Lord's forest without risking a fine. They call it trespass, even if the wood was already dead. Last week, a girl from the next hamlet over was caught hauling a bundle of pine twigs in her apron. She was brought before the reeve and had her ear boxed so hard she fell sideways into the snow. Everyone watched. No one stepped forward. They never do. You're lucky. Your cottage is just beyond the edge of what the reeve considers his lordship's business. Still, you don't take chances. Every splinter you burn is a quiet rebellion. The fire crackles now, greedy and alive. You feed it a twist of hay and a broken chair leg. That chair's been wobbling for months anyway. Behind you, your sister lays out the kettle and the little clay pot of oats. Not much today, just enough to fill 2 ladles. Your cousin left with the baby before sunrise, murmuring something about milk and charity. You hope she finds both. You remember a winter, maybe 3 years ago, when the fire went out completely. A windstorm knocked the chimney stones loose, and the snow poured straight into the hearth. You tried everything. Dry moss, old rags soaked in tallow, even a candle stub melted over twigs. Nothing worked. For 2 days you lived without fire. You ate cold beans and buried yourselves under blankets like mice in a cupboard. Your breath froze on your lips, your toes turned blue, and when the fire finally returned, it felt like salvation. Since then, you've never let it die if you can help it. Even if it means waking every few hours, even if it means burning your last spoon handle, or a page from the Psalter. That's the thing about winter fires. They're never just for heat. They're for cooking, for drying, for boiling water clean enough to drink. They're for light when the sun vanishes before supper. They're for hope, flickering in a world that wants you still and silent. And they're for safety, because without it, the cold creeps in, and it brings things with it you can't always see. By mid-morning, the fire is steady enough to step away from. You pull your shawl tight and head out to the woodbin again, hoping no one else has raided it. The sun is up now, but it doesn't give warmth, just light, cold and pale like old milk. As you lift the lid, a small grey mouse darts out, disappearing into a crack. It's searching too. Everyone is. In winter, survival is a negotiation. with the land, with the animals, and sometimes with the people living just one door over. You drag a few sticks from the bottom of the bin and carry them in your arms like a baby. They're half damp, but they'll burn if you lean them beside the hearth long enough. Back inside, the fire hisses in greeting as you feed it one of the driest. Then comes the smoke. Not the clean, warm kind, but a thick, bitter smoke that pours suddenly from the hearth, curling up into the room like a warning. You cough, waving your hand. Your sister yelps. The flue must be clogged. Again. Your mother's already moving, snatching the iron poker and jamming it up the chimney. Soot rains down in bursts. Black snow. You cover your mouth with your sleeve. The fire chokes, stutters, then flares again. These are the risks you live with. A blocked chimney can kill you in your sleep. You've heard the stories. Families found stiff in their beds, skin pink with soot poison. The constable marks the doors with a cross and tells the neighbours to pray. But they don't pray. They just check their own chimneys. You open the shutter for air. The blast of cold is immediate and cruel, slicing across your neck like a blade. But the smoke clears, slowly. By noon, the fire behaves again. It settles into its proper rhythm. Crackle, hiss, pop. You sit close and stretch your hands toward it, turning them slowly like bread on a spit. The skin on your knuckles is split again. You dab them with pig fat saved from last week's roast. It stings, but it seals the cracks. Your grandmother hums softly as she cuts an onion. The knife clacks gently against the board. You know the routine. She'll toss it into a pot with water, oats, a little salt if you've still got it, and then, if you're very lucky, a sliver of cheese rind. That, she says, makes the whole thing feel like a feast. You glance over your shoulder toward the firewood pile. It's lower than it should be. 2 days left, maybe 3, unless someone trades you a bundle, or unless you risk the woods. The woods are dangerous in winter, not just for wolves or the Reeves men, but for what happens if you fall, if you twist your ankle, if the cold finds you before someone else does. One woman went out last year and didn't return. They found her in the thicket come thaw, still clutching her apron like she was hiding something precious. That's the unspoken rule of winter fires. Keep them burning, yes, but never burn yourself trying. As evening creeps closer, you lean in and poke at the coals. They sigh, shifting into red-orange rivers. You sit beside your sister, both of you hypnotized. It's strange, you think, how something so small, so flickering can feel like power. But then again, what else do you have that stands against the cold? The air smells like boiling oats and onion, but your stomach's already moved past hunger. It's thinking about warmth. You crouch near the hearth, cradling your wooden bowl like it's made of gold. Steam curls from the surface, and even before you taste it, you know it's too hot. That's perfect. You hold the bowl close to your chest, letting the heat seep into your fingers. It's not much. Mostly cloudy water with bits of grain and a scrap of root vegetable. But it's hot. That's what matters. A sip scalds your tongue, but you don't mind. You take another. This isn't just food. It's survival in broth form. In the winter, hot meals stretch further than cold ones. A pot of stew can serve 5 instead of 3 if you water it enough and serve it steaming. People fill up on the heat as much as the contents. Your grandmother claims there's a trick to it. If you eat slowly, let the warmth reach your bones, it'll stay with you longer. She says the Romans believed broth could chase away illness. You're not sure about that. But you've seen your cousin's baby go from crying to quiet with nothing more than a spoonful of warm mash. So maybe it's true. After breakfast, you help scrub the pot clean with straw and a little ash. Soap's long gone. The straw scratches your knuckles, but the soot comes off. You rinse it with water scooped from the barrel by the door. It's half frozen, the top cracked like sugar glass. Today is a cooking day, and that means bread. You're lucky. You still have flour. A cloth sack sits in the corner, tied tight against mice. The flour inside isn't pure. It's stretched with crushed acorns and old grain. But it'll do. You and your sister set to work, sleeves rolled back, hands dusted white. She's better at kneading. You're better at shaping. The dough is slow to rise in the cold. So you place the loaves near the hearth, turning them every so often to catch the warmest side. As the bread begins to swell, the room changes. It smells like hope, like something finished, like something good. Your mother adds a pinch of dried herbs to the next pot, just enough to make it smell like something from a better house. No meat today, but the herbs trick your nose into thinking otherwise. You laugh a little as your stomach grumbles. Your sister does too. And then someone knocks. It's not a friendly knock. 3 quick raps, sharp, measured. You glance at your mother. She stiffens, wiping her hands on her apron. She opens the door just a crack. It's the tithing man. He's checking households for grain stores. There's been rumour of hoarding, of families hiding bread while others starve. He peers in, nose twitching. You think he smells the dough. Your mother doesn't flinch. She says nothing. She stands between him and the fire. After a tense moment, he nods and leaves. You exhale. Slowly. Bread is life. But in hard winters, it's also danger. You never thought warm crust could feel like a secret. But here you are, guarding it like treasure. The dough finishes rising just as the last light slips through the window slats. You wrap the loaves in cloth and carry them carefully toward the edge of the hearth. There's no oven in your cottage, not the kind noble kitchens have with chimneys and bricks and wide stone slabs. No, your oven is a cast iron pot, blackened from years of fire and full of stories it will never tell. You set the dough inside, cover it with its heavy lid and place it directly on the coals. Then carefully you heap a few more embers on top. It's a slow bake, patient even. You've burned enough loaves to know not to rush. As the bread bakes, you sit nearby, listening. The fire pops now and then, and something shifts in the rafters above. Your sister hums softly, tracing a finger through the ash dust on the floor. Your mother is sewing by firelight, her needle flicking in and out like a silver fish. Time passes slowly, but in winter, slow is good. Slow means you're not running, not freezing, not scraping the bottom of the sack just yet. When the bread is finally ready, you lift the lid with a hook and feel the warmth hit your face. The smell is rich and nutty, with just a hint of wood smoke. The crust has cracked in 3 places, golden brown with a line of ash around the edges. It's not perfect, but to you, it's beautiful. You let it rest before cutting. That's the hardest part, but your grandmother insists hot bread makes greedy bellies. And she's not wrong. So you wait, and the warmth fills the room like steam in a bathhouse. While you wait, your cousin returns with a trade, a hunk of boiled beef wrapped in a cloth and still warm. You don't ask where it came from. She offers it in silence, and your mother nods, taking it without ceremony. That beef, no bigger than your fist, will stretch across 2 meals if she's clever. And she is. Tonight's stew will be richer than usual. A bit of onion, a shred of dried greens, 2 potatoes that look like they've seen better centuries, and now, this tiny miracle of meat. Into the pot it goes. The bread is sliced thick and each person gets a chunk, crust and all. You eat slowly, tearing off pieces, dunking them into the broth, chewing until your jaw aches. It's the kind of meal you remember even when you're not hungry. The kind you dream about during leaner winters. After supper, bowls are scraped clean with fingers, and crumbs are brushed into the fire. Not one scrap is wasted. Not because you're poor, but because you know what it costs to make warmth like this. Your sister leans against you, belly full, eyes drooping. The warmth from the food lingers inside longer than you expect. Not just in your body, but in the hush that follows. No one talks, no one has to, and in that silence for just a few minutes you forget how long winter can be. Because tonight you ate hot bread, and that means, for now, you've won. Your hands don't belong to you in winter. They crack, they bleed, they stiffen into claws around buckets and broom handles. You look down at your knuckles now, ruddy, raw, with deep red seams running along each joint like angry threads. The skin splits when you curl your fingers so you keep them half curled, like a bird perching on pain. Today's chores won't wait. They never do. There's water to haul, rushes to sweep, yarn to spin, and clothes to mend. You start with the bucket. The well is only 10 steps from the door, but it may as well be a mile. The rope is stiff with frost, the wooden crank swollen and reluctant. You turn it slowly, listening to the groan of wood on wood. The bucket finally drops with a splash. Then comes the hard part, hauling it up before it freezes again. You grip the rope with a square of cloth, your palms already sore from yesterday. The weight is heavier than it should be. Everything is in winter. You brace your feet, pull steadily, and finally, the bucket breaks the surface with a thunk. It's heavy with sloshing ice water and smells faintly of iron and stone. You spill some on your skirt, bringing it in. The splash hits your thigh and freezes almost instantly. You hiss through your teeth and keep moving. Complaining doesn't warm anything. Back inside, your grandmother gestures toward the spinning basket. You settle by the hearth and start carding the wool, slowly pulling each stubborn clump of fleece into soft strands. Then you begin to spin, twist, pull, wind, twist, pull, wind. It's a rhythm your hands remember even when your fingers scream. The wool resists you today. It's dry from the smoke, clingy from the cold. You dip your fingertips in a bit of grease to soften the work. Pig fat mixed with beeswax and a pinch of elder sap. You rub it into your skin, into the wool, into the wheel. It smells earthy and strange, but it helps. Your mother says hands are a woman's first tool and her last defense. You believe her. You've seen what happens when the cracks go too deep. Infection, swelling, fingers that won't bend again. One girl in the next village lost 3 fingernails last winter from frostbite. Another had to wrap her hands in rags soaked in rabbit fat for weeks. There are tricks, of course. You've tried them all. Rubbing nettle leaves on the skin to bring blood back. Sleeping with your hands tucked between your thighs. Blowing on your palms until you're dizzy. Some women smear mashed garlic across their knuckles, then wrap them in linen overnight. It stinks, but it works. Maybe, and always, there's lard. Thick, gritty, grainy stuff. Smeared like a balm. You keep a pod of it near the hearth, covered with cloth and hope. You glance down at your fingertips now, threaded with wool, marked with little red half-moons where the fibres have cut in. They sting, but they move, and that's what matters, because as long as your hands move, the house moves, the fire stays lit, the clothes get mended, the family eats, so you spin, and the wheel hums like a lullaby you don't remember learning. Afternoon brings laundry. You'd think no one would dare wash clothes in the dead of winter, but dirt doesn't care about the season, and neither does stink. You carry the bundle to the stream behind the trees, breath already short in your chest. Every step crunches underfoot, the frozen earth biting back with every movement. The cloths are stiff, almost sharp from last week's filth. You kneel by the bank where the water still runs, a narrow black ribbon cutting through the snow. The stream hasn't frozen solid, yet, but the edges glitter with ice crusts, and your reflection in the water looks pale and older than you feel. You plunge your hands in. The pain is immediate, clean and unforgiving. It climbs up your arms like fire going the wrong way. You scrub fast, pounding the cloth against a flat stone, letting the movement warm you more than the water ever could. You use lye if you have it, though today it's just ash and a sliver of last summer's lavender oil, saved for moments like this when even bad soap needs to smell like hope. You lose feeling in your fingers around the third garment. They go from burning to buzzing to numb. That's the danger point, when you stop feeling cold and start feeling nothing, but you keep scrubbing. The neighbours once whispered about a woman who fell asleep with her hands wet. They found her in the shed, frozen solid, fingers snapped off like carrots when they tried to remove her gloves. You don't know if it's true, you don't ask, but you never wash more than you have to, and you never let your fingers stay wet longer than they must. Back home, the clothes hang over ropes near the hearth. They drip slowly, steam rising off them like tired breath. You rub your hands with a cloth, then dip them in the fat jar again. You try not to wince. The cracks have reopened. Blood stains the edges of your nails. You wrap them in linen the same way your grandmother showed you. Not too tight. Let the heat in, but keep the air out. It's a delicate balance, like everything in winter. The evening chores go no easier. You help patch a boot. Tough leather, nearly frozen stiff. The needle refuses to go through. You heat it over the fire to soften the hide, and even then it takes all your strength to pierce it. Your palms bruise, your wrist aches, but you finish. There's a satisfaction in it, though no one says so, not out loud. But when your mother looks at the boot and nods once, that's enough. Later, as you kneel by the fire one last time before bed, your grandmother takes your hands in hers. Hers are older, gnarled like tree roots, skin like dry parchment, but still strong. She turns your palms upward, nods at the bandages, then rubs them with a mixture you haven't smelled since last winter. Birch sap mixed with bear fat. Rare, thick, and saved for nights like this. It smells faintly sweet. "You'll need these hands," she says softly. "Winter's only halfway through." And so you sleep, knowing tomorrow they'll hurt again. But they'll move. And that's what survival is. You wake before the fire. Again. The cold has a way of creeping under your clothes no matter how many layers you wear. You pull your shawl up over your head and lie still for a moment, listening to the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that means everything is frozen. Even the air feels brittle. But you're already thinking about what needs to be done. And today, that means facing the worst part, getting dressed from the skin out. Because your underlayers are damp, and that's dangerous. You sit up slowly. The straw mattress crackles beneath you. You reach for the bundle of underthings that's been hanging by the hearth all night, hoping it dried fully. Woolen hose, a patched-up shift, a linen loincloth, the kind most women don't talk about, but every woman wears. You've always hated putting it on in the cold. The cloth is rough and the knot never sits right. But it's better than nothing. Much better. Your grandmother swears by layering wool scraps under it for extra insulation. You tried that once. It chafed for a week. Still, there's no choice. You slip it on, biting your lip as the fabric meets your skin. You shift, adjust, knot the ends around your waist, then pull on the rest of your layers. The wool hose is next, itchy and uneven, tied with strips of leather just above the knee. One tie always slips. Always. There's a trick to moving in all these layers. You learn not to bend too fast or too far, or everything shifts, and once the cold gets past the first layer, it never leaves. So you pad everything carefully, stuffing extra rags around your waist, adding a second apron over the back of your skirt. Not for modesty, for wind. Wind always finds your spine. Your cousin once told you that in some towns, women sew pockets of moss into their underthings in winter, tiny layers of living warmth. You thought it was a joke. Then you tried it. It wasn't. Moss holds heat better than cloth, and once it dries from the steam of your own body, it makes you feel almost safe. Almost. There's a line in your mind between decency and desperation. But winter doesn't care about lines. It pushes you to do what works. Like the wool pads you wear beneath your arms to soak sweat before it freezes, or the strips of cloth you tie around your thighs when you know you'll be walking far and chafing is a certainty. You remember the old woman down the lane, Edith, the widow with the green eyes. She says she used to wear 3 pairs of hose layered over each other. By the 3rd pair, I couldn't feel my knees, but at least I could feel my toes. Then she'd laugh, toothless and warm in her rags. The thought makes you smile as you wrap your final shawl and slip your feet into the thickest slippers in the house. Old leather, lined with rabbit fur long gone flat. You're dressed. You're still cold. But now you can move, and that's the beginning of every winter day. You notice it as soon as you squat to lift the water pail. Cold air, sliding upward through your skirt, snaking around your legs like a thief. Even with every layer, the drafts find you. So you do what the older women taught you. You squat with your knees close, never wide. You shift your skirts down over your ankles before moving. You tuck every hem you can. Because in winter, modesty and survival aren't at odds. They're one and the same. And still, there's the matter no one dares speak of too loudly. relieving yourself. You save it for as long as you can. Most do. Because going outside in this weather, hiking your skirts and braving the icy air against your bare thighs, it's torture. The latrine is a wooden bench over a pit, sheltered by planks that creak in the wind. You dread it every time. You brace yourself, step in, lift the latch, and feel the bitter gust whip up from the hole like something alive. The wood beneath you is frozen, the seat numb against your skin. You do what you must, quickly, clutching your shawl with one hand, your skirts with the other, praying the wind doesn't shift. Back inside, you warm your hands by the fire, but the sting lingers, not from embarrassment, from exposure. You know women who've suffered worse. Frostbitten thighs, infections from old cloths reused too often, days lost to fever because the cold crawled too far in. Your mother keeps a basket by the hearth filled with squares of old linen, ragged but clean, dried near the fire each day, rotated carefully. It's your version of hygiene. No soap, no warm bath, but at least you're not using snow, like the girls from the next village over. Sometimes, when the snowbanks are too high and the wind too fierce, you don't even make it to the latrine. You use the chamber pot, a dented tin bowl, half covered with a cloth for modesty. It freezes over if left unattended. You learn to empty it quick before the contents become a block. And still, some women bleed during these months. Not all cycles stop for winter. When yours doesn't, you feel like the world has betrayed you. The linen pads you wear are stiff from cold, heavy from use, never quite clean enough. You try to dry them behind the hearth, but sometimes the fire is too small. Sometimes they freeze overnight and crack when you fold them. One woman, Marta, the cooper's wife, swears by wrapping her hips in nettle-stuffed cloth to heat the blood. She says it burns just enough to keep her warm for an hour. You tried it once, only once. But these are the things women pass down. Not just how to dress for the cold, but how to suffer through it with dignity and tact. How to protect the parts of yourself that no one else sees. How to survive not just publicly, but privately too. You sit back down by the fire and stretch your feet toward the flames. A curl of steam rises from your skirts. Just a little moisture chased away. You smile, because it means the warmth is reaching you, at last. And in that moment, wrapped in rags, cracked with cold, you feel strangely clean. You wouldn't think the cold could make justice colder, but it does. This morning the bailiff came through the village, big man, red-cheeked and scowling, wrapped in fur that probably cost more than your entire home. He wasn't there to collect taxes this time. He was looking for someone, a woman. You weren't told why. You're never told why. Only that she spoke out of turn, or stole a bit of firewood, or refused a lord's order, or maybe simply survived too visibly when others hadn't. The snow crunches differently under the boots of power. The men who follow him don't slip the way you do. They've got leather soles, iron-capped, meant to grip frozen mud and stomp through drift. They barely notice the cold. Their job is to find, accuse, and punish. You stay inside as instructed, but you hear the noise, the knocking, the way doors open without permission. You hold your sister's hand, not because she's in danger, but because you don't want her to see what winter can do when law walks in boots. Later, when the door slams across the way and the shouting fades, your grandmother sighs, not from shock, from memory. She's seen this before. Cold makes people cruel, she mutters, and tosses another log into the fire. She's not wrong. You've seen men blame winter for things they'd never dare say in summer. Too hungry to think straight. Too tired to be kind. Too cold to care. But somehow, it always lands on women. You remember old Miller, who was caught cutting pine from the Lord's Grove last winter. She was fined 2 silver, but she had none. So they took her goat. Her only one. She didn't make it to spring. They said it was natural causes. But you know what the real cause was? Justice served in frost. It isn't just about theft or trespassing. It's about how the cold turns every minor act into a threat. A woman taking extra firewood becomes a rebel. A woman refusing to freeze quietly becomes a problem. And when it comes to punishment, They don't delay. Stock still stand in the village square, even in winter. You've seen women locked in them while snow fell steadily on their shoulders, hair freezing into ropes, feet bare on icy wood. One cried, one didn't. You don't know which was braver, but you know this. Winter shows no mercy, and neither do those who use it as their weapon. You stir the pot of stew, keeping your eyes low. Your mother speaks in a whisper. Your grandmother says even less, and outside the air feels tighter somehow. By dusk the men are gone, and the square is quiet again. But something lingers. That kind of fear always does. The cold isn't just in the wind or the stone or the silence of night. It's in the laws that were never written to protect you. In the way footsteps fall heavier when they're coming for a woman. In the knowledge that, even here, even now, survival isn't just about firewood and bread. It's about being invisible at the right time. The frost deepens overnight. By morning, even the inside of the window shutter has a skin of ice. You run a finger along it, tracing a circle, and it squeaks under your nail. Outside, the world has vanished under a white hush. The square is empty. No stocks, no guards, no footprints. But you remember the look in your mother's eyes yesterday when the bailiff passed. Not fear exactly, something tighter. Anger pressed down into silence. She's lived through more winters than you. She knows the rules better, knows when to speak, when to lower her head, when to vanish. You help her today as she repacks the food chest, moving flour to the back, hiding the salted turnips under a basket of rags. Not because you're hoarding, but because justice, when it does come, often takes what it finds first, and it rarely leaves anything behind. Later, your grandmother tells you a story as you shell dried peas into a pot. Once, long ago, a woman lit her own hearth in the forest. No lord, no tithe, no man. You glance up. Her voice is low and her hands are steady. They said she was a witch, but all she did was survive too well. You ask what happened to her. Your grandmother doesn't answer. The silence is enough. It's strange how the cold exposes things. Cracks in the wall, yes, but also cracks in rules, in fairness, in patience. When food runs low, the reeve suddenly counts your stores more closely. When a man is found frozen in the road, it's a woman who's questioned first. Did she feed him? Did she close her door too soon? You once heard of a girl punished for covering the footprints of a thief with fresh snow. She didn't know who he was, didn't care. She just wanted to protect someone. That was enough to be called an accomplice. It's not always that harsh. Sometimes winter softens judgment. The blacksmith's wife is allowed to keep her goats in the kitchen. The baker's daughter can sneak a second heel of bread to the widow by the well without punishment. But those kindnesses come quietly, and they come from neighbours, not from law. You've learned to listen for fairness like you listen for a thaw. You hope for it, but you don't count on it. That's why the women talk by firelight when the men are asleep. That's why they share stories of which reeve looks away and which one doesn't. Which steward has a sick wife and might show mercy. Which ones don't. You keep these stories close. You memorize them. Because winter is not just about warmth. It's about being prepared when the knock comes again. You think of the woman they took yesterday. Her door still hangs open, swinging slightly in the wind. No one's dared to shut it. That's another kind of punishment. Letting the cold take what's left. But not your house. Here, the fire is strong, the doors are sealed, and the hands are busy. That's how you fight the kind of cold that walks on 2 feet and carries a writ. Not with weapons, with vigilance. The frost clings to everything today, branches, shutters, even the chickens' combs. They blink at you from their coop like scorned children, too cold to cluck, too proud to die. You toss them feed with one gloved hand and wrap the other tight around your shawl, already feeling the air seep in through a seam you forgot to mend. There's a stillness to winter mornings like this, the kind that makes you count things. You catch yourself doing it now. How many days of firewood? How many dried roots left? How many spoons of flour? How many bodies in the house, breathing? And then your eyes drift toward the hut near the edge of the road. The widow's hut. It slumps like it's trying to disappear, its roof buckled from the last snowfall, chimney leaning like a crooked finger. No smoke, no footprints, no sound. You pause. There are few people winter hits harder than the widow. She's been alone since late autumn, when her husband slipped on the frozen bridge and cracked his head on a stone. No one speaks of it directly. But you remember the silence that followed, the way she came to the well less often, how her fire grew thinner each night. She has no sons, no brothers, no barter left, and no rights, not in the eyes of the law. Without a man, she has no access to the Lord's timber, no formal share of the harvest, no protection from roaming officials who demand hearth tax from every household, regardless of who's left to pay it. You glance back toward the cottage, where your own hearth spits and crackles, and then down at your hands, chapped, bleeding, worn through, but still working, still warming others. So you do something no one told you to do. You gather a small bundle, one end of your spare kindling rope, 2 crumbling turnips, and the heel of yesterday's bread. You wrap it in cloth, tuck it under your arm, and step outside again before the snow starts to fall. The widow's door doesn't open when you knock. You wait. You knock again. Nothing. Then, slowly, the latch lifts. She's smaller than you remember. Eyes like dull glass, fingers trembling around the edge of the door. No words. You don't offer any. You simply hand her the bundle and nod. She nods back. Not thanks. Not yet. Just recognition. You walk home with the snow melting into your sleeves. Back inside, your mother doesn't ask where you've been. She's already refilling the basket. Your grandmother mutters something about pride, but doesn't stop her. Your sister folds another scarf and adds it to the stack. Because you all know, in winter, a woman alone is a hearth without fire, and when a hearth goes cold, it doesn't just take one life, it takes the memory of warmth for everyone else. Evening creeps in early now. By the time you've swept the last of the ash from the hearth and folded the dry linens off the line, the sky has already turned pewter. That soft, empty kind of grey that doesn't promise snow, but doesn't promise it won't come either. The widow's door is shut now. Smoke trails faintly from her chimney. A victory. One no one will talk about, of course, but you'll notice if the smoke keeps rising tomorrow. You always notice. Back inside, the room is still. Your sister dozes beside the hearth, one arm draped over her mending. Your grandmother has fallen asleep in the corner, her face softened by the glow of firelight. You sit with your hands in your lap, not spinning, not stitching, just watching. And that's when the wind changes. It slips through the tiny space between the window shutter and the frame. A colder current, sharper. Your skin prickles. The fire doesn't change, but the air around it does. You feel it. A warning. A shift. This is the part of winter you don't talk about out loud. The part where the cold becomes something else. Not just weather, not just discomfort, but a presence. Something creeping, watching for the cracks in your house, in your clothes, in your soul. And the women know it. That's why, when a woman is widowed, she isn't just left alone. She's left exposed. The fire doesn't burn the same without 2 pairs of hands tending it. The food doesn't stretch the same when no one helps haul the sacks. The roof leaks sooner, the walls mould faster, the cold finds more ways in. You remember once, years ago, helping your mother prepare for a neighbour's burial. He died of a fever, but his wife, his widow, was still alive. Barely. She sat in the corner while the rest of you laid out his shroud. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just rubbed her hands over and over, as if trying to remind them they were still there. Your mother gave her a pot of soup and an extra log. Quietly. Discreetly. The next day, a different woman brought bread, then rags for patching, then salt. No one said they were helping. They just did it. Because if they didn't, who would? The church rarely noticed. The Lord never did. And the reeve. He'd come by to count the widow's debt before the burial dirt froze. A formality, nothing more, So the women step in. Not with sermons, not with coins, but with hands, with warmth, with bread and twine and shoulder-to-shoulder silence. It isn't charity, it's insurance. Because every woman knows, one bad winter, one wrong cough, one loose roof tile, and she could be next. You add another log to the fire, not because it's cold, but because the cold is listening, and you want it to know. Not this house, not tonight, not while your hands still move. There are few things more terrifying than childbirth. But childbirth in winter, that's something else entirely. You've seen it, you've heard it. And now, as the knock comes at your door, sharp, hurried, breathless, you know it's come again. Your mother is already on her feet. She grabs the birthing cloths without a word. Your grandmother checks the pot of water on the hearth. You grab the herbs, the good ones, dried yarrow for bleeding, juniper for scent, and the thread. Always the thread. It's the cooper's wife this time, a third child, first one born in snow. You follow the midwife through the storm, boots sliding on the icy path, wind cutting like broken glass. The house is a blur of noise and heat and fear. Inside, the room is already thick with sweat and smoke. The fire blazes and the windows drip with condensation. Someone has blocked the cracks with cloth, old skirts mostly. A cat watches from the rafters. Even it looks worried. The woman lies on a bed of straw and linen, legs bent, eyes wide. She doesn't scream, not yet. That will come. For now, it's the breath. Short, sharp, wet. You help wash her feet with warm water. Her husband stands useless in the corner, wringing his hands. He's pale, not from the cold, from the helplessness. Birth is not his realm. He knows it. Your mother kneels between the woman's legs, hands steady, voice low. The midwife unrolls her tools, a small knife, a strip of boiled linen, and a wooden spoon. Not for the baby, for the mother's teeth. The pain will make her bite. You've heard stories of babies born too fast in the cold, born blue, born stiff. Some make it, some don't. The old women say the warmth of the mother's belly fades too quickly in winter, that you have to work fast, rub the feet, wrap the head, blow warm breath onto their skin if nothing else works. You fetch the swaddling. It's been sitting near the fire all day. Still, it feels cool in your hands. You tuck it under your arm and get more water. The cries come sharper now. 1, 2, 3. Then the silence, the dangerous kind. Your grandmother hisses through her teeth. And then, at last, a cry. Not from the mother, from the child. High, thin, alive. The room doesn't cheer, it exhales. You bring the bundle forward, hands trembling. The child is small, slick, pink, wrinkled like an old man and already angry at the world. You wrap him quickly, tucking the edges in tight, and pass him to the midwife. She checks him over, listens, nods, then hands him back to the mother, who weeps without sound. But it's not over. There's the afterbirth, the bleeding, the thread. Your mother takes the small knife, black-handled, sharp as memory, and cuts the cord. The thread is tied in 2 places, tight enough to stop the warmth from spilling out. You feel your throat close watching it. Every time it feels like a miracle held together with string. The linen cloths go into the fire. Not all of them. Some are too precious, but the ones with blood. The ones that could carry fever. You stir the ashes when no one is looking, just to be sure. Outside the wind howls. Inside a boy is born, in winter. And that means he's already fought his first battle. The child sleeps now, bundled tight against his mother's chest, his breath a faint cloud on her skin. The fire has been stoked high, and still it doesn't feel like enough. Winter presses at the walls, insistent and jealous, like it wants back what was just wrestled from its grasp. You sit near the hearth, cradling the bloodied rags in a basin of warm water. Your hands move on their own, scrub, wring, rinse, repeat. But your mind's still back there, watching that tiny, angry cry pierce through the smoky room. You won't forget it. Not ever. There's a saying in your village, a baby born in snow will always sleep with one eye open. You never knew what it meant until tonight. The fire isn't just for warmth now. It's a shield. A wall of orange light keeping the chill from crawling back into that child's bones. You glance toward the mother. She's pale, her lips cracked, her eyelids fluttering. The colour hasn't returned to her cheeks yet, but she breathes steadily. Her hand remains wrapped around her son like a closing gate. You know what she's thinking. You're thinking it too. Don't let him freeze. Don't let him fade. You place the rags beside the hearth to dry. Not too close. You've seen cloth catch fire before. The smell of scorched linen haunts a house for days. The midwife pours a bit of tea from the kettle. Yarrow, thyme, and something darker. She lifts the cup to the mother's mouth. The woman drinks without complaint. She's too tired to resist. Then she speaks, voice rough as old bark. What's the time? Your mother glances at the window. Still pitch dark. Closer to dawn than not, she says. It's the best answer anyone can give in winter. Time bends. Night stretches forever, and day slips past in grey streaks. But soon the cocks will crow, and that means bread must rise, goats must be milked, children dressed, this child among them. You help wipe down the floorboards. Blood, water, ash, all mixed now into a paste that no one will talk about again. That's the way of things. Birth is messy, but life is always messier. You ask if you can take the afterbirth to the woods. Your mother nods. You wrap it in linen and carry it out through the snow, careful with each step. The wind has dropped, but the cold remains sharp, knifing at your knees. In the woods, you dig a shallow hole, just enough to cover it with earth and prayer. Some women whisper over it. You don't. You just stand still for a moment. Then you go back. The cottage is quiet when you return. The fire burns low again. The baby sleeps. The mother too. You place another log on the hearth, just in case. You know how quickly the cold returns when no one's watching. In time, the boy will grow. Maybe strong, maybe not. But you'll always remember that he started here, in the depths of a winter that did everything it could to stop him, and failed. Because this night the fire held, and sometimes that's all it takes. You don't remember the first time you heard the bells. They don't sound like the ones from the village square, or the tolls that count the hours on market day. No, these bells are smaller, duller, hung from a strip of leather beside an iron gate deep in the hills, the kind that don't call people in, but keep them in. They belong to the convent, and this morning your mother sends you there, not for penance, for trade. The sisters have honey, and thick wool thread, and something else that everyone whispers about but no one names aloud. Heat. Not firewood, not furs, but a different kind of warmth. The kind that comes from stone walls sealed against wind, habits made of thick woven cloth, and a daily rhythm that doesn't bow to weather. While others suffer in silence, the sisters sing. They rise early, sleep under quilts stitched by generations of women, and bathe, yes, bathe, in water, warmed by the sun through sheets of stained glass. At least that's what they say. You've never been through the gate before. The snow crunches under your boots as you make the long climb. The wind here is sharper, less forgiving. The convent walls rise out of the hillside like a carved promise, thick and unmoving. The bell rope dangles from a beam over the gate, swaying slightly, even though there's no breeze. You pull it. A long pause. Then the scrape of wood. The door creaks open just enough for a pair of eyes to meet yours. Calm, steady, unsurprised. You offer your basket. Dried herbs, 2 candles, and half a wedge of hard cheese. Nothing special, but enough to speak the language of exchange. The nun takes it and nods. You're allowed in. The warmth inside isn't immediate. It takes a moment to notice that your breath no longer clouds, that your hands don't sting, that your feet aren't buzzing with the numb threat of frostbite. The halls are quiet. Stone beneath your feet, tapestries on the walls, everything hushed but not heavy. The air smells faintly of beeswax and bread. You glance toward the corner, where one sister is spinning yarn, her wheel humming like a secret prayer. You're led to the hearth, wide, deep, and generous. A pot of porridge bubbles softly, and another sister stirs without speaking. She hands you a bowl. You don't ask if you're allowed to eat. You simply sit on the bench beside it and take a bite. It's warm, it's bland, it's perfect. And for the first time in weeks, your hands don't ache. One of the older sisters joins you. Her face is lined, but not tired. She wraps her hands around her own bowl and glances your way with a small smile. Your grandmother used to bring us rosemary, she says. You blink. You didn't know that. She sips. She never asked for much, just a skein of thread, sometimes a jar of balm. Once, when her hands cracked too deeply, I gave her beeswax and she didn't speak to me for a year. You laugh before you can stop it. It echoes, just a little, in the stone corridor. But no one shushes you. The sister smiles again. You're welcome to sit a while. And you do. Because here, for once, the cold stays outside. The hours pass softly in the convent. Time doesn't feel as sharp here. It doesn't scrape your skin the way it does out in the open. You watch the sisters move with quiet certainty, sweeping, spinning, tending herbs in clay pots by the window. Every motion has weight, but no urgency. You're not sure when the second bowl of porridge appeared in your hands, or when someone draped a heavier shawl over your shoulders, but you notice the heat now, not just from the hearth, but from the rhythm, the steadiness, the calm. You're tempted to ask if you can stay longer, but you don't, because you know this place isn't built for outsiders. Not really. The walls don't keep the world out. They contain something that requires stillness, obedience, silence, and your life is motion, reaction, noise, children to chase, goats to feed, fires to coax. You were born into the wind, not the stone. Still, before you leave, the elder sister hands you a small bundle, a twist of beeswax, thick sewing thread, and a square of soft cloth scented with dried lavender. For your grandmother's hands, she says, and yours. You stammer out a thank you, fumbling with the basket, ashamed of the cracked skin on your fingers. She doesn't seem to notice, or maybe she does, and chooses not to. As you step back into the cold, the wind greets you like an old, rude friend. It rushes down the hill, tugging at your skirts, biting your cheeks, but it doesn't reach your core. Not yet. You're still carrying the warmth with you. On the walk home, your thoughts drift. You've heard stories about women who flee to convents in winter, not for prayer, but for refuge. Widows, runaways, the unwed and pregnant, the broken, the clever. Some stay, others are turned away. The sisters never explain. You once overheard two men in the village scoff about the nuns. Warm and fat in their stone walls, one had said, while we dig trenches for food. But they don't understand. The warmth here isn't luxury. It's earned. It's built by discipline, by silence, by self-denial. The women inside those walls don't lounge by firelight. They pray through frostbite. They kneel on cold stone. They wash floors with stiff fingers and bury their sisters in frozen ground when needed. They aren't spared from the cold. They endure it differently. By the time you reach home, the sky has darkened into that strange violet dusk. Smoke rises from your own chimney now, thin but present. You step through the door and your sister jumps up from the hearth, cheeks pink from tending the fire alone. Your grandmother takes the bundle without a word, her thumb pressing into the wax like she's testing a memory. Your mother places the sewing thread beside the others with a satisfied nod. No one asks what the sisters said. No one asks what you traded. It doesn't matter. What matters is the fire still burns. What matters is you came back with warmth. And in the end, that's what survival really is, isn't it? Borrowing warmth wherever you can find it. The morning starts, like all the others, with the fire. Always the fire. You've stopped counting how many days the snow stayed on the ground. It no longer melts between storms. It just deepens, stiffens, presses into the earth until it's not snow anymore but part of the land itself. the kind of cold that settles behind your ribs and makes itself at home, but there's no time to dwell, because winter doesn't stop work. If anything, it multiplies it. You and your sister are tasked with spinning today, not for your own clothes, those are already patched beyond hope, but to trade. A neighbour needs yarn for her mending, and has offered dried apples and a tiny pouch of salt. Salt is gold in this weather. It keeps meat from turning and soup from tasting like boiled sadness. So you sit near the hearth, wheel between your knees, and begin. Pull, twist, wind, pull, twist, wind. Your grandmother taught you this rhythm long before you understood it. Back then, it felt like a punishment. Now you see it for what it is, a quiet kind of magic, turning fluff into thread, wind into warmth, labour into currency. Your sister groans beside you, her fingers already red. The wool sticks to itself in this dry air. It catches on every little crack in her skin. She blows on her hands, holds them near the fire, then tries again. You offer her a smile. Slow is fine. It gets done either way. She rolls her eyes but doesn't stop. Outside you hear the creak of a cart. Likely the tanner's boy making his deliveries. Rawhide gloves, stiff as bark, but in demand now. Everyone is trying to finish their winter work before the real freeze begins. The one that makes the air so cold it silences birds. That freeze doesn't come with fanfare. It arrives one morning like a closed door. By midday your legs are stiff. You shift, crack your knuckles and check your spindle. Nearly full. You tie it off with a practised hand and set it aside. Another spool ready. Then comes the next job, boiling the soap scraps. You gather the stubs, hard nubs of lye and animal fat, and toss them into a small pot. You add water, stir slowly, and let the mixture melt into something vaguely usable. It stinks, but it works. Your sister sets up the laundry frame. Not for washing today, too cold for that, but for drying what little you managed yesterday. Each cloth is stiff, frozen into folds. You snap them gently and hang them near the fire, hoping they'll thaw before nightfall. Your mother returns from the neighbours with a hunk of frozen butter wrapped in burlap. She places it near the coals, nods at the yarn and says, "One more spool and we'll get barley." Barley means stew. Stew means fullness. Fullness means heat. Everything leads back to heat. You take a breath, stretch your fingers, and reach for the next tuft of wool. Winter doesn't care if your hands ache. Winter asks for proof of effort. It asks for spinning wheels, cracked skin, soot-stained cheeks, and women who work even when there's no applause. So you spin, because someone must. The sun begins to drop by mid-afternoon, casting long slashes of light across the stone floor. But you don't stop working. There's sewing to be done. Your sister's hem is unravelling again, and your mother's mitts are worn down to the last fibres. So you thread a needle with the new yarn and begin, careful not to waste even an inch. Your fingers are stiff. They always are by now. You pause now and then to warm them over the coals, rubbing in beeswax when the skin threatens to split. You've learned to sew with your hands wrapped in linen, like boxing gloves for winter. Not elegant, but it gets the job done. Your sister begins to hum. You don't recognise the tune, but it's steady, and it fills the quiet in a way the fire can't. Outside, the snow starts again. Thin flakes at first, swirling sideways. You glance toward the shuttered window. No one will be visiting now, which means it's time for mending the shoes. You pull your mother's boots from under the bench. The soles are soft with wear, nearly caving at the heel. You take the awl, heat it over the fire and push it through the stiff leather. Then you thread a thick strand of waxed yarn and stitch slowly, pulling tight with each pass. The smell of singed hide clings to your clothes. Your mother watches from her corner, hands still moving in her lap, darning a pair of socks with near-invisible stitches. She doesn't speak, but there's something in the way she watches your fingers. Approval, maybe, or just exhaustion. These are the hours of winter no one writes about. The slow ones. The hands and knees, back-hunched, bone-tired hours that stretch between daylight and dark. They don't feel dramatic, but they build the world. You think of your neighbour, the one with 10 children. She weaves baskets in winter, tight, perfect coils from brittle willow branches soaked in snowmelt. Her fingers move faster than yours ever could. She sells them come spring, but winter is when they're born. You think of the miller's daughter, who embroiders cloth so fine the priest's wife ordered 3. She stitches by candlelight, with mittens cut at the fingertips. You think of the blind woman on the edge of the village, who twists cords by feel and sells them in neat little bundles. No one knows how she ties the knots so evenly. None of these women are idle. The hearth, the spinning, the sewing, they're not just chores. They're what holds the world together while everything outside freezes and sleeps. You see that now. You finish the last stitch on the boot and set it aside. The snow thickens, blanketing the roof with a hush. The fire pops softly. Your grandmother snores gently in the corner, a half-mended shawl slipping from her lap. And you? You lean back, fingers aching, heart steady. Outside, the cold deepens, but inside, the work continues, and the warmth it makes is real. The manor stands like a frozen ship on the hill, its stone walls tall and still, chimneys puffing smoke into a sky that doesn't feel like it belongs to the same village below. You see it every day, a cold silhouette above your world. But today, you're walking toward it. Your cousin, the one with clever fingers and good teeth, was summoned to work in the manor kitchen weeks ago. And now she's sent for you. Just for a day. Someone's sick, or someone slipped on the stairs and cracked a wrist. You weren't given a reason, just a name scrawled on a slate and passed through the baker's boy. You layer yourself heavily, knowing that no matter how grand the house looks from afar, its corridors are just as cold, maybe colder. Stone doesn't hold heat. It reflects it back at you like glass. The steward greets you at the back gate with a grunt. No smile, no welcome. Just a glance at your boots and a nod. You follow him in. Inside, it smells of wax, smoke, and boiled game. Not unpleasant, but strong, overwhelming. The kitchen is vast, twice the size of your home, and filled with copper pots, iron hooks, and pale women moving quickly. None of them look up. They're too busy keeping the fire alive. You're handed a cloth, a basin, and a stack of dishes to scrub. Your hands are raw before you even begin. The water is lukewarm, grease floats on top. You work in silence, wrist deep in animal fat and crumbs too soft to recognize. You glance up once and catch a glimpse of her, the lady of the house, sweeping past the far door in a flurry of skirts lined with fur. She doesn't look cold, but she doesn't look warm either, just tight, like she's wrapped in something you can't name. Later, when the kitchen clears for supper, you take a breath and peek into the corridor beyond. Tapestries hang in heavy folds, candles flicker along the stone, and yet there's a draught. Always a draught. You follow your cousin up the narrow stairs toward the laundry loft. Here, the frost creeps in through every slit in the shutter. The linens are stiff, heavy, and hard to fold. One girl mutters about chilblains. Another rubs her fingers between folds of cloth for warmth. Even in fine houses, winter clings to the corners. Your cousin leans over and whispers, "They have braziers in the upper rooms, but only the guests get them. We get wool slippers and luck." You laugh softly. It's not bitterness, just truth. The nobility have furs, fox, ermine, bear, but they wear them for ceremony, for display. Long gowns that drag on the floors, sleeves that trail like banners. Beautiful things, but useless for warmth. You've seen a baroness's fingers turn blue during a feast, her rings too cold to remove. You've seen a lord's wine freeze in the cup between toasts. Coal doesn't bow to titles. You help fold another sheet, thick, heavy, embroidered with birds you've never seen in real life, and yet it smells faintly of mildew. Even the grandest fabrics can't hide what winter brings. By evening your back aches, and your hands have gone numb again. But as you walk home down the hill, you carry something odd with you. The knowledge that even behind stone walls and velvet drapes, women fight the same cold. only with more silence. The wind is sharper coming down from the manor hill. It presses into your chest with every step, curling up your sleeves, sneaking past your scarf no matter how tightly you pull it. Your fingers ache from scrubbing, your lower back throbs from the lifting, and your legs feel like they're made of firewood, dry, splintering, close to snapping. Still, you walk. The village lights glow faintly below, flickering through shutters like small stubborn stars. And as you step back into the cottage, the smell of boiled cabbage and burnt toast greets you like an old friend. Not pleasant, but honest. You set your boots near the hearth, peel off your outer layers, and sit beside the fire. Your sister looks up from her stitching. Your grandmother hands you a cup of warm broth, more water than meal, but still warm. You sip, then speak. It's colder in the manor than it is here. Your mother raises an eyebrow. Is it? You nod. The floors bite through your shoes, the halls breathe like caves, and no one laughs. That last part surprises them, but not much. Everyone knows the cold comes in more than one way. You tell them of the noblewoman's chamber, where velvet curtains hang stiff as frozen sails, where two maids work at once just to hold the basin so the lady's hands never touch the water. You describe the way the fire was lit but never looked at, as if it were too low a thing for their gaze. They listen, not because it's shocking, but because it's familiar in a different costume. They wear fur, you say, but they still shiver. Your grandmother chuckles. Because fur can't warm a hollow life. You're not sure what that means, but you store it away. Then your cousin arrives, late, cheeks flushed red from the cold, lashes dusted with frost. She tosses down a cloth bundle, inside half a loaf of fine white bread, the kind made with sifted flour, no bits, no ash. It smells like feast day. Stolen? Your sister whispers. No, your cousin says, lowering her voice. Forgotten. Which in manor kitchens is nearly the same thing. You all eat slowly, reverently, letting the soft crust melt against your tongues. It tastes like warmth, like decadence, like something that wasn't meant for you but came anyway. As the night deepens, you slip into your shift and shawl, preparing for bed. The wind scratches at the walls again. You hear the snow begin, soft at first, then heavier, thudding against the shutters like someone tapping to be let in. You lie down close to your sister, the warmth between you building like a second fire, and you wonder, do the ladies in the manor sleep two to a bed? Do they share stories under the covers? Do they tuck hot stones beneath their feet? Or is that too common for silk sheets? You don't envy them, not really. Because they wear fur, yes, but they do not gather it. They sip hot wine, but they do not stir the pot. They warm themselves by fires they didn't build, in homes they don't defend. You light your own coals, wrap your own wool, press your own back against another human to stay alive. And in the coldest months, that might be the richer life. It starts with a smell, sharp, earthy, almost sweet, but not quite. You lift the lid of the small clay jar and inhale carefully. It's familiar, comforting, and just a little dangerous if used wrong. It's rosemary, dried last summer and stored for times like these. Not for cooking, though it can be, but here, in the dead of winter, it's for medicine, for memory, for warmth. Your grandmother asks for it in a whisper, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she leans closer to the hearth. Her breath rattles a little this morning. Not enough to worry the others, but enough that you notice. So you fetch the little pouch of herbs and start preparing what she calls the warming drink. It's a concoction of dried rosemary, thyme, juniper berries if you have them, you do, barely, and a pinch of dried orange peel stolen from a feast 3 months past. You crush the herbs with a stone, not too fine, just enough to wake them up. Then you pour water, already hot from the hearth, over the bundle in a cup, wrap it in cloth, and place it under her palms. She nods. She won't drink it yet. She'll hold it first. Let the heat seep in. Your mother adds a clove to her own cup. She says it helps clear the head, but mostly she likes the smell. Your cousin swears by garlic boiled in milk. She says it keeps out both spirits and chills. You've tried it. Once, The memory still makes your stomach turn. And then there's the red drink. Your sister calls it that, though it's barely red, just dried elderberry, a few crushed rose hips, and hot wine diluted with water and thickened with a spoonful of honey, if you're lucky. If not, beetroot does the trick. You sip slowly, feeling the warmth trickle down your throat and settle low in your belly like a coal. It doesn't last forever, but for the moment, you can feel your toes again. The old women say the body needs fire from within, not just from the hearth. That a well-fed belly makes better blood, and better blood means warmer fingers. They talk of mustard plasters for the chest, of vinegar foot rubs, of goose grease wrapped in linen and tied under your arms. You've seen it all. Once, when you had a cough that wouldn't leave, your grandmother rubbed a paste made of onions and lard on your feet, then pulled on your wool stockings and told you not to move. You didn't. By morning the cough had loosened. You were never sure if it was the paste or the fear of getting another dose. Now you keep a small pouch of dried sage in your pocket. It smells like heat, like memory, like the part of summer that never quite died. And in the back of the cupboard, wrapped in 2 layers of cloth, is something rarer, a sliver of dried ginger, given by the peddler who passed through months ago. Your mother hasn't touched it yet. She's waiting. For what? You're not sure. But in winter, you learn to wait, to save, to choose your warmth wisely. Because everything that burns bright must be rationed. Even herbs, even hope. The fire crackles lower as evening comes, casting dancing shadows across the rafters. You sit close with your sister, both of you cradling steaming cups of the red drink. Elderberry and honey tonight, no wine. The last of the honey was scraped from the pot with a wooden spoon that still smells faintly of onion. But you don't complain. It coats your throat like velvet, and for a moment your chest doesn't ache when you breathe. Your grandmother exhales through her nose and stretches her legs, blanket pulled up to her chin. She doesn't say it, but you can tell the drink helped her. Her cheeks have colour again. The little shine in her eye has returned, though her hands still tremble a bit when she lifts the cup. "Don't waste it," she says suddenly, voice sharp with a trace of something else. Fear, maybe, or reverence. Every pinch of root and rind costs more than silver when the snow is deep. You nod. Everyone does. Because you remember last year when the rosemary ran out, when the fever swept through 3 cottages and left 2 children too cold to cry, when someone boiled pine needles in desperation and someone else drank lye thinking it was sage. Winter is long enough to confuse even the wise. The women in the village know this. That's why they swap pouches like currency. Mint for time, yarrow for comfrey. One time your mother traded a spool of black thread for a thumb-sized clump of dried chamomile, just to calm your sister's night terrors. Not every remedy is for the body. Some are for the mind, like lavender tucked into pillows to soothe sleep, or cloves pressed into an orange and hung by the window to drive out the smell of damp, or valerian root steeped in lukewarm water to ease trembling hands when grief won't pass. You've seen the difference. You've seen what happens to people who lose the rituals, who run out of balm, of bark, of hope. Their eyes go distant, their breath shortens, their words vanish. So you keep your little pouches wrapped in cloth, tucked in corners, labelled with scraps of charcoal on old linen. You share them when you can, but not all at once. Never all at once. You never know which cold will be the cold that breaks you. Your cousin, the one who works at the manor, once smuggled back a tin of spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, and something sweet none of you could name. It was a gift for a holiday none of you had strength to celebrate. Still, your mother boiled water and dropped in a sliver of each. The room smelled like a story, like a place far from snow. You each had a sip, 1 sip. Then she poured the rest into the fire. The room smelled of warmth for hours. Now, as the flames dim and the shutters rattle in the wind, you place another pinch of sage into the warming pot. Not for sickness, not for ceremony, just because it's the darkest night of the week. And you've learned that sometimes a single scent can keep the cold from climbing inside your bones. You close your eyes, press your cup to your lips, and sip again. It tastes like summer, pretending not to be gone. You're awake before anyone else today, not because you want to be, but because something dripped on your face in the dark. Again. You sit up slowly, rubbing your cheek with the back of your hand. It's wet, and not from sweat or spilled water. No, it's from the ceiling. Melted frost from the thatch above, warmed ever so slightly by your body heat rising during the night, only to betray you by falling back down as a cold, wet kiss. You sigh, quietly. The fire's dead. You knew it would be. The embers gave their last breath sometime around midnight. You don't blame them. Even heat has limits in a house like this. You rise, barefoot on the icy floorboards, and pull your cloak around your shoulders. A straw wisp sticks to your knee. The rest of the family sleeps in a pile of fabric and limbs behind you, their breath forming little clouds in the dark. You slip outside, careful not to wake the goat. She hates being startled. The wind slaps you full in the face, sharp, immediate, personal, but the air is still. No storm, that helps. You head around to the side of the house where the woodpile waits beneath a warped canvas, sagging from last night's snow. Or, what's left of the woodpile. You stop. 2 logs, that's all. 1 split, 1 whole. A nest of damp sticks clings to the corner, half frozen, brittle. You stare at it for a long moment, then you reach down, pick up the split log, and tuck it under your arm. The other you leave for tomorrow, or maybe the day after. You'll ration warmth like bread from now on. Back inside, you set the log gently into the hearth, pile dry bark around it, then kneel and begin the slow process of bringing it to life. Flint, steel, sparks. They leap, fade, leap again. Then finally, a curl of orange. It catches, grows, finds the bark, licks at the edges. You coax it carefully, feeding it with twigs, then the smallest of the damp sticks. The smoke stings your eyes, but you don't move. You blow, you whisper to it. And when the flame flares, you feel something close to joy. A flame means tea. It means bread. It means dignity. And it means you can dry the ceiling drip before someone else wakes with it sliding down their nose. As the room begins to glow with firelight, you catch a glimpse of your home with fresh eyes. The cracked beams, the drafty shutters, the low ceiling stained with old smoke and soot. The straw-stuffed gaps in the wall, the single shutter that never quite closes. It's not beautiful, but it's still standing. And that matters. Because when winter blows hard enough, it doesn't just test your fire, it tests your house. Your house is everything. It's not just shelter, it's protection from hunger, wind, sickness, shame. It's what keeps you dry when the snow comes sideways and what holds your family together when silence turns sharp. And when it fails, people talk. You remember the weaver's cottage, how the roof collapsed last January after a week of snow. The family survived, but not their dignity. They spent the rest of the season shifting between neighbours' hearths, like ghosts in borrowed shoes. Your mother swore it wouldn't happen to you, so every winter she checks the thatch. She plugs the cracks. She smears clay over the stones when the frost begins to creep. And you? You feed the fire that makes the house feel like more than just walls. You make it home. By the time the others wake, the fire is steady, the room smells faintly of toasted oats, and the spot where the ceiling leaked has been mopped with a cloth now steaming on the hearth. Your sister blinks at the glow and sighs in relief before even saying good morning. Your mother just nods. That's thanks enough. Everyone moves a little more slowly these days. It's not laziness. It's preservation. You only use the muscles you need because every movement costs warmth. Today is repair day. Your mother lays out the tools, a dull hatchet, a mallet, a ball of twine, a handful of crooked nails salvaged from a broken stool. She points to the southern wall. The cold is coming in there, beneath the frame. Again. You help lift the rush mat and see it. Frost along the base of the wall, feathery and white, tracing the stone like a warning. Your sister fetches the old sackcloth, and together you stuff the gaps with a mix of straw and mud from the cellar. Your fingers are numb halfway through. The straw scratches, the mud crumbles. But you work anyway, because a house is not warm by accident. You press the stuffing deep into the crevices, using a stick to tamp it tight. When that's done, your mother spreads a layer of lard-soaked rags over the spot. They smell terrible, but they block the wind, and that's all that matters. Later, your grandmother uses that same lard on the hinges of the door, muttering about the squeak of death that draws in curses. You don't believe in that. But the door does swing easier afterward. The roof is next. You climb the ladder slowly, the rungs slick with frost. From up here, the village looks small and smoky, its chimneys puffing like tired lungs. You tug your cloak tighter and begin the check. Loose thatch. One corner pulled back. Snow has melted in, pulled slightly, then frozen again. You patch it the best you can with extra reeds soaked in vinegar, a trick you learned from the thatcher's boy last winter. He said it keeps the mice out. So far he's been right. You descend slowly, breath visible, heart pounding from the cold more than the height. Back inside, the house feels warmer already. Not bad, your mother says, tapping the wall. Won't hold till spring, but it'll hold tonight. And tonight is what matters, because winter teaches you not to look too far ahead. The roof doesn't need to last a season, just a storm. The wall doesn't need to be perfect, just tight enough to keep breath in and snow out. Survival comes in layers, like your clothes, not one thick barrier, but many thin ones carefully placed. You drape your cloak over a stool near the fire, turning it so the damp side dries first. Your sister lays the bread near the edge of the hearth, not close enough to scorch, but close enough to soften. Your grandmother settles into her corner, hands wrapped in warm cloths, eyes heavy. And you? You sit back, close enough to feel the heat on your shins and listen. You listen to the walls creak as they settle. You listen to the fire sigh. You listen to the roof above you hold against the weight of snow, and you know, tonight your house is ready. Not perfect, but warm. And that's everything. The cold changes how people speak. Not just the tone, but the timing, the volume, the space between words. In summer, conversations drift like wind through tall grass. People laugh louder, interrupt more. But in winter, words come slowly, deliberately, like each one must be warmed before it's safe to share. You notice it this morning as you sit by the fire with your sister, silently mending a sock with more hole than heel. She hums under her breath, the same tune she always falls into when she sews, but neither of you speaks. There's no need. The quiet between you is comfortable, like wool pulled over the ears. Then your mother says something low, barely louder than the creak of the floorboards. Did you hear about the candlemaker's wife? You look up, shake your head. She slipped on the ice near the well, broke her leg clean. Your grandmother exhales slowly, not a gasp, just acknowledgement, a sound to mark the news. She won't walk properly till summer, your mother adds. No one says more, you don't need to. Everyone understands what it means when a woman can't walk in winter. She can't fetch water, she can't gather wood, she can't tend the fire herself. If she's lucky, someone will do those things for her. If she's not. The conversation drifts back into the quiet. That's the way of things. In winter, the loudest place is always the hearth. The rest of the house is full of whispers, half sentences, glances. You learn to listen not just to what's said, but to what's withheld. You think of the market square in summer, voices rising, arguments over onions, children shouting, dogs barking. You haven't heard that kind of noise in weeks. Even the dogs bark less in winter, as if sound costs heat. Outside, a group of boys passes by, their boots thudding over the snow, voices muffled by scarves. You catch only fragments. And he said not to, burned his hand, never came back. You don't know what the story is, but you'll hear the full version soon, probably whispered by the butcher's girl over the counter, or murmured by your cousin while she braids your sister's hair. That's how stories travel in winter, quietly, slowly, like the fire climbing a damp log. Sometimes the silence is protection. You remember last year, when a man accused his neighbour of stealing firewood. Nothing ever came of it, but the accusation was enough. People stopped speaking to the neighbour's wife. She stopped coming to the well. Her daughter began walking 3 fields over just to fetch water somewhere else, all because someone said something, or didn't. And so, winter teaches caution. Not just with your feet on ice, but with your mouth near ears. You whisper more, not because you're hiding, because the air is thinner, the walls feel closer, and somehow every word feels like it echoes longer. Later, as your sister sits by the fire and you braid her hair, she leans back and says, "I like it better this way." You raise an eyebrow. "The quiet," she explains, like everyone's waiting to hear something important. You smile, because maybe she's right. Maybe winter doesn't just freeze the world. Maybe it listens. As the sun begins to set, casting long golden stripes across the floorboards, the hush deepens. It's not silence exactly. There's the snap of the fire, the rustle of skirts, the occasional cough from your grandmother. But it's all softened, as if the whole house is holding its breath. That's when the best stories are told. Not the kind shouted over summer fences or passed around the market like a bruised apple. No, winter stories are different. They come in low voices between mouthfuls of stew and the turning of yarn. They're meant to be listened to, not just heard. You sit with your family around the hearth, knees tucked beneath your skirt, hands wrapped in warm cloth. Your mother dabs balm onto a split finger, then begins. "Did I ever tell you about the girl who spoke only once each winter?" Your sister straightens. Your grandmother opens one eye. She was born during a snowstorm, or so they say, and her first cry froze on her lips. It took an hour for it to thaw. From then on, her voice only returned when the rivers froze. You don't ask if it's true. That's not the point. Your mother goes on, voice low, steady. The girl grows. The village fears her. She learns to write, to listen, to remember everything. And every winter, when her voice returns, she tells the truth. Only the truth. Nothing but. And people come from all around, hoping to hear it. But by spring, she's silent again. Your sister grins. "I'd never stop talking." "Exactly," your grandmother mutters. "That's why winter keeps you quiet." Everyone chuckles. The kind of laugh that doesn't disturb the air, that falls and fades like ash. But it lingers too, like warmth in the bones. Later, after the bowls are cleared and the last of the wool has been wound for the day, your cousin leans in and whispers a story of her own, about a boy who followed a fox into the woods and came back days later speaking a language no one knew. They say he could predict when roofs would fall under snow. You're not sure you believe that one either, but again, that's not the point. These stories are warmth, not the kind you burn or boil, but the kind that fills empty spaces. They remind you that even when the world is frozen and the wind howls like a beast at your door, there are still things that move, still words that pass from one woman's mouth to another's ears, still magic of a kind. And sometimes the quiet is the part that makes it real. You share one too eventually, not about spirits or strange children, but about the goat who snuck into the pantry last week and got her head stuck in the onion basket. You embellish the ending, of course. Say she laid an egg out of surprise. Everyone laughs. Your sister wipes her eyes. "I can't breathe." "Good," your mother says. "Means you're warm." Outside, the frost thickens on the glass, but inside the words swirl like steam from a kettle. You pull your blanket tighter, smile into the firelight and whisper one last thing to your sister before sleep. "Tell me something warm." She doesn't hesitate. Your feet next to mine. You wake to the sound of hooves on packed snow. Slow, heavy, familiar. The wool merchant has come. Your mother's already at the window, peeking through the shutter slit, breath fogging the cold glass. "3 bundles," she whispers. "That's more than last year." You rise and dress quickly, fingers trembling a little as you tug your shawl tight around your shoulders. It's always coldest just before trade. But the promise of wool makes it easier to bear. He comes twice a year. This man with the wide shoulders and boots that never seem to slip. His cart is drawn by a mule so stubborn it's become legend. The village girls used to tell stories about the wool man, how he bartered with riddles, how he could judge a household's warmth by the smoke of their chimney. You don't believe most of it. But you do know one thing. He never trades without respect. He looks women in the eye. That alone sets him apart. Outside, the sky's a pale grey canvas, the kind that might snow or might not. Depends on its mood. You step into the cold and feel the air bite your cheeks, sharp and clean. He greets you with a nod, tipping his cap. You lead him inside. He doesn't speak right away. He never does. First, he warms himself by the hearth, accepts the cup of weak cider your mother offers, and lets the room settle. Then he unpacks the bundles. 3 of them indeed, wrapped in old sailcloth tied with gut string stacked like treasure. Inside, wool. Real wool. Not scraps, not thinned rags, but thick rolls. Undyed, rough, honest. The kind of wool that drinks dye and heat alike. The kind that turns a dress into armour. Your grandmother runs her fingers across it like she's touching something holy. She nods once. Then comes the trade. Your mother lays out what you've prepared. 2 jars of preserved apples, 6 skeins of hand-spun yarn, a spool of thread so fine it glints like frost, and a small pouch of dried rosemary. You offer a mended glove as well, stitched so tightly even the wool man takes a moment to inspect it. He considers. He adds a 4th bundle, small but compact. Probably a higher weave. No words, just nods. That's the wool trade. As he packs up, your sister asks timidly, "Do you ever get cold?" He smiles. "Only when I stop moving." A good answer, one your mother likes. You help carry the wool inside, laying each bundle near the hearth, but not too close. You've seen wool scorch. The smell lingers for days. For the rest of the morning, the cottage is filled with the sound of measuring, cutting, stitching. Your mother hums as she works. Your grandmother mutters about pattern lengths and thread tension. You and your sister roll yarn into balls, pin pieces together, and sort through the wooden buttons kept in a small tin marked with charcoal. Wool is life. It wraps around your bones, slows your breath, saves your skin. And now it's yours. Enough for socks, enough for sleeves. Maybe, if measured carefully, even enough for a new cloak. Outside, the mule stomps, impatient. The wool man tips his cap again and disappears into the pale light. Inside, the warmth has already begun. You're still running your fingers through the new wool when your mother hands you the shears. "Your turn," she says, laying out the cloth with careful hands. It's the smaller bundle, the one with the tighter weave, soft enough to line the inside of a hood. You swallow hard. You've never cut new wool before. Only scraps, old sleeves, the torn backs of skirts that no longer fit anyone. This feels different. Your sister kneels beside you, watching wide-eyed as your mother pins the pattern into place. Chalk lines drawn from memory, from years of making do. You grip the shears tight and start to cut. Slow, even, firm. The sound is unlike anything else. A soft, thick shh, like snow being cleared off a rooftop. Every snip is a promise. Every edge you trim will wrap around someone's shoulders soon. Maybe your grandmother. Maybe the baby down the road, whose mother hasn't had dry rags in 3 days. The wool carries a faint scent of lanolin, greasy, earthy, alive. It clings to your fingertips, coats your skin with something that feels like it belongs. You imagine the sheep it came from, standing in some wind-blown field last autumn, warm beneath its own coat, unaware of the hands it would warm next. That's the strange part about wool. It's always second-hand warmth, borrowed heat, passed from beast to blade to woman, and now to you. As you finish cutting, your cousin arrives, shaking snow from her cloak. She brings word from the next village. They've had a fire, not the warming kind. A chimney collapsed, 2 homes lost, no one dead, but everything soaked and frozen solid. They're calling for help. Your mother doesn't hesitate. She wraps the 2 largest pieces of wool you just cut and places them in a sack, along with an old flask of lamp oil and 3 candles. They'll need something dry, she says, something to start over with. You feel pride and grief at once. Because wool is warmth, but it's also story. It's sacrifice. It's what you give away when someone else is colder than you. By twilight, you've started sewing the lining for a new cloak. Your sister helps hold the fabric steady. Your stitches are uneven, but tight. You tuck a bit of rosemary into the hem, just like your grandmother taught you. So it smells of better things when the wind bites too hard, she always said. That night your mother drapes the finished hood over your shoulders. It's plain, undyed, but it fits. You step outside into the snow, just for a moment, and for the first time in weeks the wind hits your face, but not your neck, not your chest. The cloak holds. You run your fingers along the seams, feeling each stitch. You made this. You helped make this. And it will last. Not just for the season, but maybe for years. Passed down, patched, reshaped. That's the power of wool. Not just warmth, but memory made wearable. Behind you, the windows glow with firelight. Inside, your family pulls closer together, voices low, the hum of spinning wheels beginning again. And you stand alone in the snow for just a moment longer, warm, wrapped in the effort of every woman who came before you. You're up before the sun this time, not because anyone told you to be, but because your body knows what's coming. There's a frost heavy enough to blur the outline of the shed, and the breath from the cow lingers like smoke in the air. Today is washing day, and there's no way around it. You wrap your fingers in linen strips before you touch the handle of the wash barrel. Even that small precaution isn't enough to keep the sting out. The wood bites. The air bites harder. Your lips have cracked again overnight. You can feel the pull when you try to smile. No one likes washing day in winter, but still, it must be done. There's a system to it, one passed down like a spell. You haul water from the rain barrel near the eaves. It's half frozen, so you chip away with a stick, then tip the slushy contents into the iron pot set above the fire. You'll need it warm, too warm to touch really, if you want any chance of softening the linen. Your sister gathers the soiled cloths, the underthings, the rags, the baby's wrap. Nothing too thick. Thick wool doesn't get washed in winter. It gets aired, beaten, and prayed over. But linen must be cleaned, or the itching will drive you to madness. You pour the steaming water into the lye barrel, careful not to scald your wrists. A thin steam rises, mixing with the frost in the air. The smell of wood ash and old soap clings to your sleeves. It'll take days to shake it. Your mother drops the first bundle in and begins stirring with the long wooden paddle. Round and round, over and under. The rhythm is steadying, almost meditative, until your sister slips on the icy stone and drops an armful of clean rags right into the slush by the door. No one yells, but the silence that follows is worse. You help her up. Press your hand into hers to warm it. Then you gather the fallen rags, muddy now, soaked through. You set them aside. They'll be last, if there's water left. The worst part is rinsing. Even after boiling, the cloth must be plunged into the creek or into a trough filled with clean snow. That's where your hands go numb. That's where you lose the feeling in your fingertips and don't get it back for hours. You remember last year when your cousin's fingers turned pale and waxy after a wash. The midwife said it was frostbite and she nearly lost the smallest one. That image sits with you. So this time, you wear gloves beneath your gloves. Wool over linen. Still, it helps only a little. But the strangest thing is what happens after. The lines are strung indoors, ropes stretched from one beam to another, sagging slightly from the weight of wet cloth. And the smell, somehow both sharp and clean, like cold iron and lye, but also something more honest. You watch the droplets form and fall. You notice how your breath clouds the air. And when you finally sit, arms sore, sleeves damp, cheeks pink from the wind and effort, there's something else too. A pride. Because no one else will see this laundry. No one will compliment the way your shirts no longer reek of smoke or skin, but you'll know. You'll feel it against your own back, and that's enough. By afternoon, the air inside your cottage hangs heavy with steam. Wet linen drips steadily from the beams, and the scent of ash soap and damp fabric clings to everything. Your hair, your sleeves, even the dog's fur as he curls in a corner, grumbling softly. You sit near the hearth with your hands outstretched, palms open to the warmth. They're red and raw, but not bleeding. That's a victory. Your grandmother hands you a pot of goose fat and nods toward your knuckles. Rub it in while they're still warm, she says. Cold hands crack open like dry bread. You don't argue. You scoop a dollop and massage it into the skin. It smells faintly of onions and old feathers, but it works. Outside, the sun hasn't risen so much as brightened the sky a little. It won't get higher than a few hand widths today. Winter does that. It steals time as easily as it steals warmth. You blink, and half the day has gone. Your sister pulls the thickest linens from the line and lays them near the hearthstones to finish drying. These are the ones reserved for night use, folded and tucked beside the mattress, ready to be layered over tired bodies like extra skin. You remember when your mother dyed one of these sheets using onion skins. It turned the cloth a soft golden hue, like the pale inside of an egg. She said it made the room feel warmer, even if it didn't actually warm anything. That's the secret of survival, isn't it? Sometimes it's not the heat, but the illusion of it that gets you through. There's one last task before the light fades completely. The outhouse cloths, not spoken of, not dwelled on, but essential. Soft, cut into strips, stored in a lidded basket by the door. Clean ones go on top, rinsed in snow and boiled with wood ash. They are frozen stiff when hung, but thaw quickly by the hearth. You do it all without flinching now. That's what winter teaches, how to hold your breath and just move forward. Later, when the linens are finally dry, you fold them with your sister, stacking each one neatly in the wooden chest. There's something sacred about it. A hush settles over you both. These aren't just cloths. They're the difference between comfort and cold rash, between sleep and hours of itching misery. Your grandmother runs her hand along the folded stack and mutters a phrase in a dialect you only half understand. Something about the old gods and clean linen. You don't ask her to repeat it. You're too tired now anyway. You crawl into bed between layers that smell faintly of lye and firewood. Your shift is stiff at the sleeves but dry. That's what matters. Your skin hums with the lingering ache of work, but your chest feels lighter somehow, like you've stored away one more piece of the world that won't turn against you in the night. Outside, the stars are sharp and clear. You can hear the occasional snap of frost against the window frame, like branches breaking somewhere far away. But you don't shiver. You're clean. You're dry. And for now, that is enough. You wake to a silence that isn't peaceful. It's too still, too heavy. No wind howls through the shutters. No footsteps scuff the floor. Even the dog hasn't stirred. It takes you a moment to realize what it means. Snow. Not a dusting. Not the kind that brushes off your shoulders with a shrug, but the deep, smothering kind. The kind that blankets the world so thickly, even the roosters forget to crow. You sit up slowly and pull back the woolen curtain over the small window near your bed. All you can see is white. White heaped against the sill, white clinging to the thatch of the roof across the lane, white curling in waves where the road used to be. The fire has burned low, but the coals still glow faintly. Your mother is already up, crouched beside the hearth, feeding kindling in with practiced hands. She doesn't look at you, but she speaks softly. We won't get to the market today. No one argues. You weren't expecting flour anyway, but that doesn't make it easier. A heavy snow like this means days of being cut off. No mail, no visitors, no trade. Even the goats might refuse to leave the shed, and worst of all, it means heat must stretch farther, wood must burn slower, and the bread must last longer. Breakfast is thin broth from last night's pot, reheated and passed from hand to hand in a single iron bowl. Your sister dips a piece of rye crust into hers and doesn't speak. The broth smells like onion and boiled bone, and it warms your mouth just enough to fool your belly into thinking it's more than it is. You spend the morning indoors, bundled in layers, doing quiet tasks, rewrapping the bundle of dried herbs used to scent the chamber pot corner, winding thread, patching a hole in your left sock. But mostly you listen, Listen for creaks in the roof beams. Listen for the drip that says a leak has formed. Listen for the heavy groan of snow shifting above you. Because snow this deep becomes a weight, not just on the house, but on your mind. It presses inward, slows time, makes you feel like you're living in the pause between breaths. Mid-morning, your brother tries to open the front door and can't. It's frozen shut. You watch him dig his fingers under the latch, pounding it gently with the heel of his hand. Nothing. Then your mother brings out the trick, a cloth soaked in warm water, wrapped over the iron hinge. Within minutes, the frost begins to crack. That's something, at least. Once the door is open, a gust of frigid air rolls in, thick with the smell of snow, clean, metallic, tinged with pine resin. You step outside just long enough to fetch the kindling from beneath the eaves. The snow comes up past your knees. You can't feel your ankles. The sky's flat and white, like it hasn't made up its mind whether to snow more or just wait. Back inside, the door is barred again, and you peel off your damp socks to dry by the hearth. You hang them on a line strung across the chimney stone. They won't dry quickly, but at least they won't freeze to your toes. You glance around the room. It's quiet again. Even the dog doesn't bark. This is the kind of snow that changes everything, even if it stays only a few days. And the worst part? You know it's not the last storm this season will bring. The second day of the snowstorm begins with a headache. Not from illness, but from the thick, unmoving air that settles low to the floor, pressing on your temples like wool soaked in cold water. The fire never quite went out during the night, but it didn't thrive either. The room feels like it's been holding its breath. You add wood with trembling fingers, coaxing the flame to wake. It takes effort. The logs are half damp from the snow crust that crept in under the eaves. You lean in, blow gently and whisper an old rhyme under your breath, the same one your grandmother used to say when the fire wouldn't catch. A prayer, a charm, or simply habit. It doesn't matter. The flame listens. It flares. Your hands sting from yesterday's cold. The skin between your knuckles has split in places. You rub them with the last of the sheep tallow and tie a strip of linen around your right thumb. You'll need that thumb today, because today is digging day. You and your brother take turns clearing a path through the snow, from the cottage to the livestock shed. The snow is waist-deep in places, drifted high from wind that never howled but whispered relentlessly all night long. The shovel is more like a flatboard tied to a stick, and it scrapes along the stone with a sound that grates your teeth. Each scoop feels heavier than the last, snow that fresh should be light. But this isn't fresh anymore. It's heavy and damp, packing into itself like flour in a baker's bin. You don't make it far, but you make enough. Just enough for the goats to get air, just enough for the hens to be fed, just enough to feel like you've pushed back against the blankness that threatens to erase everything. Back inside, the cold clings to your clothes like a jealous ghost. You change fast, wrapping your feet in rags and layering 2 shifts before settling by the hearth again. No one speaks loudly today. It's as if your voices too might crack from the cold. In the evening, your mother tells a story. Not a new one, but a comforting one. About the winter when the river froze so thick that a whole ox cart crossed without falling in. You laugh. Even though you've heard it before, that's the point. And then she tells another. This one quieter. She speaks of a woman, long dead, who survived the deepest winter by hanging dried sage above her door and sewing crushed rose hips into her children's collars to ward off the chills. You've heard that one too, and you know what she's really saying. You nod, and that's enough. Night falls early. There's no distinction between the end of the afternoon and the beginning of evening, just a slow fading of light, like a candle suffocating in a glass. You wrap yourself in 3 layers of cloth and press your back into the straw-filled mattress, and then, before sleep takes you, you listen. Not for wolves, not for thieves, but for the soft, almost imperceptible sound of snow sliding off the roof. A delicate sigh, like the house letting go, just a little, just enough. You wake in the stillest hour, the one just before dawn, when the sky's neither dark nor light but something in between. The room is quiet but not cold. Not anymore. The fire has gone out, but its warmth lingers in the stones. And for the first time in what feels like weeks, you're not shivering. Your nose tells you before your eyes do. The snow has stopped. The air smells softer, like wet earth and soot, and something faintly sweet. Maybe the leftover pine from last week's firewood. You stretch beneath the covers, feeling each joint protest, each finger stiff, but no longer numb. The deep freeze has passed. You're not foolish enough to believe winter is over, but this storm, this long siege, is done. Your mother is already up, her silhouette outlined in the grey-blue of early light as she cracks the shutters open with care. A rush of cold slips in, but it's tolerable. Outside, the village is buried. Roofs curve under the weight of snow, and chimneys smoke like they're exhaling after holding breath too long. You wrap a wool shawl around your shoulders and step outside without being told. It's time to help dig out the neighbours. That's what happens now. When the storm ends, the real work begins. The lane is nearly gone, covered by a crust of ice so smooth it reflects the sky. Your boots crunch through the surface layer with each step, and you feel the cold creep up your legs through the soles. But there's sun. Weak, yes, but real. A golden smear across the edge of the sky, and it changes everything. At the baker's house, a few others have gathered, trading greetings in low voices, hands in mittens, breath like clouds. The baker's wife is missing a glove, so you give her one of yours. Her fingers are blue, but she smiles as she wraps them in the wool. You begin with the well, clearing snow away so the bucket can reach water again. It's slow work, but not lonely. Every few minutes someone adds a joke or a song fragment, or a tale from another storm, older, colder, worse. You chip ice with a flat stone and remember the snowman you built once as a child, only to see it crumble in a thaw. This snow won't crumble for days, maybe weeks, but still, it's shifting. At midday, someone brings out a bundle of dried apples. You share slices with cracked lips, the sugar clinging to your tongue like gold. One of the older women has hidden cinnamon in her bodice. Just a pinch, just enough to sprinkle on the fruit. It smells like a festival. The whole village moves slowly but together. That's the rhythm now. You don't survive this alone, and everyone knows it. And while you dig, while you pass the bucket, while you carve out paths through a world that tried to disappear under snow, you feel something new grow in your chest. Not hope exactly, not yet, but the shadow of it. The sun never fully shows itself that afternoon, but it tries, casting a pale halo over the whitewashed village, making the frost glitter like crushed glass. You sit for a moment on the edge of a woodpile, breath rising, cheek stung pink, hands raw but steady, and you look around. What you see isn't just snow or hardship anymore, it's resilience, shaped by hands like yours. There's the smith's daughter, sleeves rolled, breaking ice from a roof's edge with a hammer meant for iron. There's old Marta, hobbling with a broom to sweep snow from her doorstep, her apron soaked but her jaw set like granite. Even the children help, stomping narrow paths in the drifts like small determined oxen. And you, who just days ago could barely bear to crawl from the warmth of your straw bed, are here among them. Your stomach still groans more than it's full. Your fingers are still cracked and red. But you have made it through this storm, not because you were stronger than it, because you bent without breaking. Like the birch outside your door, at home, the midday stew simmers with a bit more life. Not thick, not rich, but there's a potato chunk, a shred of cured meat, even a floating bay leaf saved from last summer's herb harvest. You tear the heel of rye bread with your teeth and let the warmth spread through your belly, anchoring you. Later, as dusk rolls in again, your mother lights a tallow candle and sets it in the window. Not for light, there's little to see in the blackness, but for ritual, a way of saying, we are still here, we still stand. The storm did not take us, and then something unexpected happens. A knock at the door. It's the weaver's wife. She's brought wool scraps, the ones that weren't spoiled by damp. She offers them freely, for mittens, she says, or lining for boots. Your mother gives her a jar of rosehip jam in return. There's barely enough left in the jar to coat the bottom, but that isn't the point. This is what winter does, you realise. It carves the fat from life, yes. It takes ease and comfort and demands everything in return. But in doing so, it leaves only the necessary, the true. Kindness, endurance, the quiet courage to show up for others when your bones are screaming to rest. That night, you sleep under the same patched blankets, with the same faint ache in your joints. But something has shifted. The silence outside no longer feels like danger. It feels like rest. And in your final waking thought, as the candle flickers low and shadows settle across the walls, you think back to all that kept you alive. The warmth of stones, the closeness of bodies, the strange power of onion broth, the smoky heat of sheep dung, the pinch of rosehip in a collar, the fire kiss of tallow on cracked skin, and the stubborn, beautiful refusal to give in. This winter will not be the last. But you will meet the next one wiser, readier, with fingers already mending the seams of what might break next time. And for now, you sleep. And now, as you lie still beneath your own blanket, let all that ice and effort melt away. Picture the snow outside the cottage window, no longer threatening, just resting in soft mounds under the moonlight. The fire has burned down to embers, casting a warm amber glow that flickers gently on the walls. Everyone is safe. No one is cold tonight. You feel the weight of wool layers on your chest, not heavy, but grounding. The same way the women in that medieval village might have felt after enduring the fiercest storm, worn out, but held up by each other, by ritual, by stubborn wisdom passed from hand to hand like mittens or stories. Let your breath slow, let your shoulders drop. You've travelled far tonight, not through miles, but through centuries, through dark alleys and snow-covered lanes, through cramped kitchens, frozen wells, flickering fires, and rooms filled with silence and survival. You're safe now, you're warm, and the storm has passed.